There I was, standing in front of over 500 corporate managers. The room was so quiet, you could hear a cough from the back row. 1,000 eyes locked onto me, waiting for my next words. And then I blew it. Not because I forgot my speech, not because I didn't prepare, but because I did what so many speakers do. I delivered facts, I delivered data and information. And by the time I finished, I looked out and saw blank faces, no emotion, no real connection, just polite applause in a room full of people who would forget everything I had just said by the time they reached the parking lot. That's when I learned the most expensive lesson in public speaking. If you do not tell stories, your audience simply won't remember you. Think about it. How many speeches have you sat through where the speaker had great information, but you couldn't recall a single thing they said? Now compare that to a great storyteller, someone who pulls you in, who makes you feel something and leaves an impression that sticks for years. That's the power of storytelling. Welcome to another episode of the Next Stage Speaker Secret Success Podcast. I'm Lord Al Jensen, and if you've ever wondered why some speakers captivate a room while others struggle to hold attention, I'm about to break it down for you. I've delivered over 7,500 stage presentations, some where I nailed it, others where I bombed so hard I just wanted to disappear. And the difference between those two? Stories. Because here's the truth. The highest paid, the most in-demand speakers are not the ones with the most knowledge. They're the ones who tell the most powerful stories. And today, I'm going to share with you the 5 must-have elements of a powerful story, the same storytelling framework that top speakers, that TEDx presenters, and best-selling authors use to hold an audience spellbound. By the end of this episode, you are going to know why most speakers think they're telling a good story, but really aren't. You'll know the 5 essential storytelling elements that make your message unforgettable. And you'll know how to craft stories that don't just land, but get you booked again and again. And here's why you need to listen all the way through. In the second part of this episode, I'm going to show you how to make your audience feel like they're living in your story, and how to close your story in a way that sticks with them forever. If you skip even one of these elements, your stories will fall flat. So let's jump into it, because once you master storytelling, you master the stage. Now that you know the hard truth that storytelling is the difference between being forgettable and being booked, let's get into the 5 essential storytelling elements that every speaker needs. Because here's the thing, most speakers think that they're telling a great story, but they're really just reciting events. The real story pulls people in. It makes them feel something. It keeps them on the edge of their seats and leaves them with a lasting message. And if your stories aren't doing that, you're not just missing opportunities, you're losing your audience. So let's fix that. Every great story starts with a character that your audience can connect with. And here's where most speakers mess up. They tell stories about themselves, but they forget to make the audience care. Here's an example of bad storytelling. So there I was at my first big keynote. I was nervous, but I got through it. Here's some great storytelling. Have you ever had a moment where you were so nervous, your hands shook and your brain just went blank? That was me standing backstage, about to face 500 corporate executives. When you see someone who reminds you of you, your struggles, your fears, your ambitions, you lean in. And that's what your audience needs. If you're telling a personal story, describe the emotion and the struggle that your audience can relate to. If you're telling someone else's story, make sure the audience sees themselves in that person's journey. Use universal emotions of fear, hope, excitement, frustration to create connection. Your audience should be thinking, that's me. I've been there. Now, element number 2 is a high stakes conflict, because if there's no tension, there's no story. No conflict, no story, period. A mistake that many speakers make is telling a story instead of building one. They lay out the events, but there's no tension, no reason for the audience to care about what happens next. Here's an example of weak conflict. I had to make a tough decision in my business, so I weighed my options and I moved forward. But here's an example of high stakes conflict. I had 2 choices: take the safe path and keep struggling, or risk everything for a shot at something greater. And I had just 24 hours to decide. You see, conflict keeps your audience engaged. It creates curiosity. It makes people wonder what's going to happen next. Think of any gripping movie or TV show. What keeps you watching? Conflict, the uncertainty of how things will turn out. Even in a personal speech, if you don't introduce some kind of struggle, your story will simply feel flat. So, raise the stakes. What's at risk? What's the consequences of failure? Use vivid language. Describe the tension, the uncertainty, the fear, and the excitement. And don't rush the conflict. Let your audience feel it before resolving it. And make it personal, because if it mattered to you, it will matter to them. Your audience really should be thinking, oh my goodness, what's going to happen next? Now, element number 3 is emotional resonance. You want to make your audience feel something, because if your audience doesn't feel your story, they simply won't remember it. Think about the most powerful speeches you've ever heard. You don't just remember what the speaker said, you remember how it made you feel. And that's because the best speakers don't just share information, they make people experience it. So here's a simple trick. If you can describe it, they can feel it. Here's a boring example. I was nervous before my big speech. Here's something that's powerful. My palms were sweaty. My heart pounded so loud I could hear it in my ears. I gripped the microphone so tight that my knuckles turned white. You see, one tells the audience how you felt. The other makes them feel it too. Now, this applies to every emotion, to joy, to fear, frustration, and triumph. If you just say, I was excited, the audience might understand it, but they won't feel it. Instead, show them what excitement looked like at that moment. Use sensory details. What did you see? What did you hear, feel, and smell? Pause before big emotional moments. Let the weight sink in. And show vulnerability. Your audience connects with real emotions, not perfect performances. And make them care. If it didn't matter to you, it won't matter to them. Your audience should be thinking, wow, I feel that. Now, here's a quick recap of the first 3 elements. Number 1, a relatable character, someone your audience can see themselves in. Number 2, high stakes conflict, something real that's on the line. And emotional resonance, make them feel the moment. Now that you know the first 3 must-have storytelling elements, relatable character, high stakes conflict, and emotional resonance, let's take your storytelling even further. Because great storytelling isn't just about what you say, it's about how deeply your audience experiences it. And that brings us to the 4th storytelling element, which separates average speakers from unforgettable speakers. Element number 4, vivid sensory details. Bring your story to life in their minds. Have you ever heard a speaker who made you feel like you were inside their story, like you could see what they saw, hear what they heard, and feel what they felt? That's the power of sensory details. A weak storytelling keeps things vague, like, I walked into the room and I was nervous. A great storytelling makes it visceral. I stepped onto the plush red carpet, my shoes sinking slightly with each step. The scent of freshly brewed coffee mixed with nervous energy in the air. My hands were damp. My throat was tight. I swallowed hard, scanning the room, and hundreds of eyes locked onto me. Can you see the difference? When you give your audience specific details, their brain fills in the rest, making your story feel real to them. Because here's what most speakers don't realize. Your audience isn't just listening, they are imagining. And the more vividly you describe the scene, the more deeply they will connect. So here's how you can apply this. You can engage multiple senses. What did you see? What did you hear? What did you smell, feel, or taste? And be specific, not just a loud noise, but the sharp crack of a microphone echoing through the hall. And use contrast. If a room was freezing cold, describe stepping onto warmth. If the air was silent, describe a sudden burst of noise. Your audience should feel like they are inside of your story, living it right alongside you. Now, element number 5, transformation. And that's why your story actually matters. This is where a lot of speakers fall flat. They tell a great story, but they just don't close the loop. A powerful story isn't just about what happened, it's about how things changed. It leaves you with something. It leaves you with a shift, a takeaway. Your audience isn't just listening for entertainment. They want meaning. They want impact. They want to walk away with a lesson that sticks. If you tell a story about facing fear, your audience should leave thinking, I can face my fear too. If your story is about resilience, your audience should feel like they can push through challenges. Here's an example. A weak ending is something like, so, yeah, I eventually got over my fear of public speaking. Here's an example of a powerful transformation. I walked off that stage different than when I walked on. I realized confidence isn't about eliminating fear. It's about standing up despite it. And from that moment on, I stopped trying to be fearless and started focusing on being brave. Can you see the difference? Your story should change something, your perspective, your audience's perspective, or hopefully both. Now, how can you apply this? Ask yourself, what's the ultimate message or lesson? Show the shift. Where did you start? What changed? Where did you end up? Make it universal. How does this lesson apply to your audience? Your audience should leave with a clear, powerful takeaway that sticks with them. Now, there's power in mastering these 5 elements. Number 1, a relatable character. It makes your audience see themselves in the story. A high-stakes conflict keeps your audience engaged, wondering what's going to happen next. And emotional resonance makes them feel what you felt. Vivid sensory details transports them into the story, and transformation leaves them with a lasting impact. When you master these 5 elements, your stories will no longer be just words, they will be experiences. They will be memorable, and most importantly, they will make your message stick. Now, I don't want you to just listen to this and move on. I really want you to take action. So here's my challenge to you. Think of a story that you've told before, or perhaps one that you want to tell. Does it have all those 5 elements? If not, where can you add more emotion, more detail, or transformation? How can you make your audience feel it much more deeply? Because once you get this right, your speeches will not just be heard, they will be remembered forever. And if you want to master storytelling, I've got something special for you. Look, great storytelling isn't just a skill. It's really a superpower. It's the difference between being another speaker in the lineup and being the speaker that audiences never forget. That's why I created the Next Stage Storytelling 5 Essential Elements for Every Story You Tell. It's a mini course designed to take your storytelling from good to unshakably powerful. Here's what you get. You get a detailed 5-story framework, a step-by-step breakdown so you can apply these storytelling principles immediately. You'll get the hook and hold formula, how to start your story with a bang and keep your audience engaged from the first sentence. You'll get the story builder blueprint, a simple, repeatable process for crafting stories that captivate and persuade. As a bonus, you'll get AI-powered storytelling prompts to help you generate fresh ideas, refine your structure, and instantly polish your stories with the help of AI. And a bonus, the Ultimate Speaker Story Vault, a tool to track and organize your best stories so you always have the perfect one for any speech. And because you're a podcast listener, you can grab it right now for just $47. Click the link in the show notes or below this video so you can get instant access. Listen, your message deserves to be heard, but if your stories don't land, neither will your message. So let's fix that. Take action today and let's make your stories unforgettable. All right, that's it for this episode of the Next Stage Speaker Success Secrets podcast. If you found this valuable, subscribe, leave a review, and share this with a fellow speaker. And remember, your message matters. So keep speaking, keep inspiring, and keep transforming your audiences. And I'll see you in the next episode.